All right, in this installment, we are going to wrap things up for this little mini series on how to do quick and easy edits of home videos. I know that there's a lot more that we could show you, and so once you get the hang of working with the program in the way that we have shown you in this little mini series, you will probably want to check out some of the other tutorials that we will be creating, showing you some of the more professional end of the program, and that way you'll get an idea of how you can use a lot more of the features of the program. Even if you're only working with Edius Neo, a lot of the effects, video filters will be available to you, and we're going to be going through all of those features. So stay tuned. All right. We said that we would show you how to make a quick title and then show you how to export. I think there's one more thing I'd like to show you, and that is how to make a freeze frame or a still image. And we've got a situation here right at the end of the video where we would like to freeze frame that. And so what we're going to do is kind of step through the frames here and find a frame that we like. And you can do that with your arrows on your keyboard, your left and right arrows. You can go step by step through the frame. And once I've got something that I like, I can go and make a still shot of that one frame. Now I have this set up as a button on my menu strip. You can also do it with a keyboard shortcut of Control+T, but I'm just going to use my button here, and that will bring this frame as a still shot down to the bottom of the bin that I have open. So you see it showing up here. So what I can do now is just drag and drop that on so that it matches up with the cursor. Now before we do that, we're going to probably want to make sure that we are in the overwrite mode. So check down here, and we see right now we're in the insert mode. Let's hit our keyboard shortcut once, the insert key, and now we are in the overwrite mode. Now when we drag this right down and butt it right up against the timeline playhead there, the cursor, and let our mouse go, then our freeze frame should time up right with the frame that we grabbed. Let's check it out. Now we see a little motion going back and forth, and we don't like that. Let's right click on this freeze frame and check out our properties, and we see that it has saved this as a bitmap file. Let's maybe go up and change some settings here and see if we can't get a better still grab that doesn't have that kind of motion effect that we noticed. Let's go to Settings up in our menu, System Settings, and let's open up the little Importer-Exporter box here and go down to Still Image. We see that right now, by default, it's coming as capturing the whole frame and saving it as a Windows bitmap file. Let's change that to upper field, and let's save it as a TIFF file instead, and let's try that. Hit apply, hit OK, and let's get rid of this still. Let's go find another shot, and this time let's see how it works. Let's create another still shot. We see it comes to the bottom of our bin, and this time as we drop it on and take a look, that's solid. I like that a lot better. So if you are finding that your still shots are having a little difficulty, just remember you can change your settings up here under Settings, System Settings, and Importer, Exporter, and the still image, and just go in there and experiment with different capturing either the full frame, the upper field or lower field, and then also what file format you save it in. TIFF is probably going to give you maybe the best of all of the options. JPEG would probably be fine as well. Okay, so now we have our still shot. What about adding a title? Well, let's go up to our bin window here and launch our title tool by clicking on this big T at the top there. And if it doesn't show up, 7 for some reason, it doesn't launch the tool directly into your program, but it does activate the title tool, and it does show up here in our Windows taskbar at the bottom of our screen. And so just click on it one more time from there and it does pop up. By default, QuickTitler will show you the frame where the playhead is positioned. So, if we had this over here when we launched Titler, it would show that frame. And this helps give you an idea of how to compose your text if you're wanting to go with some particular frame. In our case, we want to kind of put a little title right in here, so we'll work with that frame. Now, if this is the first time that you're working with QuickTitler, it can be a little bit counterintuitive the first time that you work with it, but it's fairly easy to learn. Don't give up. It's not that bad. From the bottom panel down here, you can choose a style. If you want to go kind of wild with your title graphic, there's lots of crazy options here. I usually like to keep it clean and neat. And so I'll choose something that is pretty much just plain text. We could maybe try something with a little drop shadow over here. Just start out by selecting one of these here that you think might work for your design. And once you've selected one of these presets and you see this blinking cursor here, you should in theory be able to just start typing your title. And yes, in this case it works. Now, after you finish typing, just click anywhere outside of the box. And then if you want to reposition your text, click in that area again so the box shows up. And this time, you're not able to type. If you tried typing, you can no longer type. But you'll see that your mouse cursor has kind of turned into it has a little cross at the bottom there, and that lets you know that you can now point to this box and click on it. And with your mouse held down, you can reposition your text. Okay, and then you can click out of that area again. Now, as you look at this, you might be saying, what on earth? That text looks horrible. I can't use anything like that. Well, for some reason, Edius doesn't think that you should see the high resolution or finished product as you're working inside the title tool. If you want to see what that title is actually going to look like, you can go up to the menu option up here and check under View and point down to the Preview mode, and that will show you what the actual graphic is going to look like. Now, if we want to be sure that our title is going to be in the broadcast title safe region, if your video's headed out to broadcast and you want to make sure that you're legal and that your graphic isn't going to be lost on some people's monitors as they watch your program, well, you can go down here and click on this little icon right down at the bottom of your left-hand panel. Click on that once and you will see this inner square here is what is going to be your broadcast title safe, your graphic safe. And so we can point to our menu again and just bring that inside the box. However, if you know that your video is never going to be seen on the as a TV program, and it doesn't work well for your design to have it inside that graphic safe area or title safe area, if it's just going out to the internet, you could be perfectly fine to move outside of that title safe area just a little bit, just to make that a little bit more pleasing in your design to work well with your still image. So let's toggle out of that graphic safe. Now, as we look at this, it's not too bad. If it was over a lighter area like this, you might be a little bit unhappy with the dark edge that goes all the way around the text. Over here, we don't notice it too much. We could probably get away with it just as it is. But if you're working on a video clip that has a lot of white background, you're probably not going to be happy with the preset that you chose there. It's just too much black around the edge. Well, you can change that over here in text properties. We can even just unclick the edge altogether, and that just removes it completely. Or if you want a little bit of edge, you could click it back on and maybe just give yourselves 2 pixels of edge. And sometimes that can help your text stand out. If you do have a white background, it will lift it up off the page a little bit, help give it a little definition. Now also the drop shadow seems to be way too harsh, and so let's back off on the drop shadow a little bit. We can go down here and find our options here with the drop shadow. And here, under the shadow, we can change the amount of transparency. And here's one of those places where the tool is just a little bit counterintuitive or different than other programs. Right now it shows the transparency being set at 0%. And you might think, well, why am I seeing anything if it's set to 0%? Well, notice as you slide that across and move it towards 100% that your transparency or your drop shadow disappears. And so I'm not sure, this must be something that got lost in translation, or it's just counterintuitive. If you're looking to see just a little bit of that drop shadow come through, then you might want to set it to something like around 80%, which in other programs like Photoshop would be more like 20%. It's just the reverse of what you might expect. We might want to show a little bit more width on that drop shadow. So let's maybe add 4, say 5, and you could also change the color if you like, the direction. And now as we go back to transparency and bring that back down, we'll see how much we've really added there. So maybe 5 is way too much. Let's go back down to like 2 on the soft width, and then bring our transparency back to about 80. Okay, and that's not too bad. For my personal taste, I would probably take the edge completely off and just work with the drop shadow and bring it back into place. And once you're happy with your title, you can go up to File, Save, and that brings it directly into your bin window, the one that's currently open. What I would probably do at this point is drag and drop that into my graphics bin so that I keep all the graphics together in one bin. Now, once we have that title saved, and as you look at it in your bin, it looks like it's just white title over black. But because there is an alpha channel associated with that, when we drop it down to our timeline, and we'll just drop it right down to video 2, we'll see that the black that we see in the bin doesn't show up in our actual title. The alpha takes care of the black. So we would probably want to see it go to a still shot before we add the title. And we probably wouldn't want that title to show up, just pop on like that. We'd probably want it to dissolve on, unless we were to have it pop on right at the same time that it goes to a still frame. That might work. Maybe see it just a little bit before. Let's see. But if we would like to dissolve that title on, we can do that using the mix channel. All of your video tracks will have this mix channel, and it might not be turned on by default. When you start a program, it's probably going to be grayed out. And I should have pointed this out too when we were talking about volume, adjusting our volume in our last tutorial. If you tried to adjust your volume and nothing happened, and you were wondering why your program just wasn't working like mine, it's probably because your volume by default was grayed out. And if your volume is grayed out, you will not be able to adjust your audio volume at all. Even holding down the Alt key and pointing to that orange, it's nothing happening. So I'm sorry I didn't point that out. You have to have your volume selected. By default, this is selected to be turned off, and you have to turn it on in order to be able to adjust your volume. This tool really has several options, and so you can toggle between being turned off, and that means because it's grayed out, and then you click it once and it becomes volume. Now you can adjust your volume up and down. And then the other option is an opportunity to be able to pan your audio, and you'll see that the little blue line now shows up, and we would be able to actually adjust our pan by moving that up and down. And then same thing works up here with the mix channel. By default, it's probably grayed out and you wouldn't be able to make any adjustments to the video level of our graphic there. But if we turn that mix channel on, in fact, when you're looking at yours, this channel might be completely closed. It might look something more like that. And you may have dropped your graphic on and it looks more something like that, and you're wondering, well, how on earth am I going to be able to do anything with that? Well, you have to, let's maybe close out our audio tracks now and give ourselves a little bit more room for our video. And, you might be pointing to it and clicking on it and nothing happens. Well, what we need to do first of all is open up video track 2 a little bit so we can see more of it. And how you do that is just take your mouse and point to that area in between video track 2 and the very top part of the timeline window, and just start scrolling up, and then we'll be able to see video 2 open up a little bit. And when we've got it opened up, we'll see this little arrow showing here. Let's click on that, and that opens up our opportunity to toggle our mix tool on and off. And when you see it highlighted there, you know that your mix is on, and now we can go and manipulate the level of video on that video track. And what we want to do is point to an area that's just maybe about a second into the clip and create a node. By clicking on it with your mouse, you will create this little node. And even though you can't see it very well, there is a node already there at frame 1. And you can just point to that and start dragging it down. And if you drag it right down to the bottom, you've taken your graphic right down to 0, and you've created a plane here where it will gradually come up to 100%. And that makes it a dissolve that comes up from 0 to 100%. If you wanted to extend that dissolve out and make it last longer, you can just point to your node and slide it along with your mouse, and it'll be a longer dissolve. Okay, so that's it for our title tool and making a still frame. What about exporting our video? What if we want to send it up to YouTube, for example? Well, before you export your video, what you want to do is define the area that you want to export. I've got a whole 10 minutes here, actually edited 3 or 4 little music videos together of Joshua's first year. And so for his birthday party, I'm going to export the whole 10 minutes. And so I've selected the in and out. It starts with black here. And then I also like to have a little black at the end as well. Right now we've got this popping off again. I'm not a big fan of things popping off. So let's put a dissolve between the last video still that we have there and the black matte that we've put in place. And remember how you can create mattes up here. Drag a matte down, pop it into place there on the timeline. And remember, drag and drop is always going to work better if you're in the overwrite mode. If you're having trouble, remember about the overwrite and insert modes. And then with my cursor right between that, I'm just going to apply my default transition, which is a dissolve. And if I want to, I can extend that dissolve out a little bit. And also we can dissolve the title off in the same way that we brought it on. Just move those nodes around and dissolve that off just by sliding the last frame down. And now the title is going to dissolve off at the same rate as the video still. Okay, and then again I allow 3 or 4 seconds of black and set my out point. Now once you have your in and outs set, and you might want to just collapse your timeline and take one more look at it to make sure that you do have the exact portion of your edit that you want to export selected, defined with an in and out. Then hit your F11 key, F11. And this will open up your export dialog box. It's called a print to file, but it might be easier to understand as an export tool. Because basically what we're doing is exporting our video to a file format that is going to work best for any particular destination. And as we look down our list here, we see that we do have a lot of different types of export options here, different codecs that we could use, different file formats, and also we will be given the opportunity to choose the bit rate that we want to export. And if you are sending your video to YouTube, so that you can send all of your friends and relatives a link that they can click on or post your link up on Facebook, or even if you're exporting for Facebook these days, just know that you can export in high definition at a very high bit rate. As long as you have an internet connection that is fairly fast and it allows you to upload at fairly fast speeds, go ahead. If your video is only like 10 minutes, go ahead and export that at a fairly decent bit rate. Because then what happens is YouTube or Facebook or some of these file sharing programs like SmugMug, they're going to take that high definition file and re-encode it using their encoding solution, their encoding software. They're going to re-encode it 5 or 6 different ways and give your viewers the option of what size and format they want to watch it based on their internet settings. But if you want to give your viewers all of those options, then you should upload the highest quality that you can based on your internet's upload speeds. So for example, because I have a fairly fast connection to the internet, I will probably choose the Windows Media option, go up here to make sure that I'm getting the actual Windows Media video rather than the Windows Media audio, and hit export. But before we do hit export, there is one thing I really need to point out, and that is over here, you need to make sure that this export between in and out is checked. The first time you run Edius, the first time you run this export tool, Edius is by default going to have this box unchecked. And if you were to just go ahead and export at this point, Edius would export your whole timeline. And so if you have a lot of other material on your timeline beside that section that you've defined with your in and out, well, you're going to end up with a big long video with a lot of material that you never intended to have. For some reason, broadcast people like to have this export between in and out unchecked, and so that's the way it comes by default from Edius. So just know that if you have selected an area, an in and out on your timeline, and that's what you want to export, you need to make sure that this box is checked, or you're going to get a lot of stuff you weren't planning on. So with that box checked, let's hit the export button, and you'll be given another opportunity here to not only give yourself a file name, but also choose your settings. And I like to change the quality of my output up to about 92%, 93%, and change my bit rate. When I'm uploading to one of these online places, such as SmugMug or Facebook or YouTube, I like to change my settings right up to about 8,000 and keep it at an HD picture size setting, which is 1920 by 1080. And then give your file a name and hit save. And Edius will go about the process of exporting that file. And I'm going to put you on pause because this looks like it's going to take about 35 minutes to do that. All right, and once that is completed, it does show up in your bin, the bin that's open. It comes to the bottom there. And what Edius does is makes a waveform, and that's what you see happening here, the 65, 70, 67%. That's creating the waveform. But we don't have to wait till that's completed to drop it down and take a quick look. We can just drop that down on the timeline. And here we have a Windows Media Player file in an HD format, ready to put up or send to YouTube, Facebook, or any of those file sharing sites that allows you to upload a high definition video that they will then re-encode so that people can watch it using an internet connection. Okay, well, I believe that does it for our series on how to create quick and easy edits of your family home videos and how to prepare them for sharing on the internet. In later tutorials, we will come back to this issue of exporting your material so that we can demonstrate the different ways that you can export it for different purposes. But we'll talk more about that in an upcoming tutorial. But for now, I believe that does it for quick and easy edits of family home videos.